just wanted to extend my condolences first and foremost to the family, to Amma Faiqa, to Hanan, to Sister Hanan, to Brother Ayman, Sister Muna, Yasser, and Shiraz. And my condolences, my wholeheartedly felt sorrow for the loss of our father, Dr. AbdulHamid AbuSulayman, and my uncle. And I also want to thank everyone who is attending this webinar with us to share with us these moments of sorrow for the loss of Dr. AbdulHamid AbuSulayman, and moments of glory and celebration also of his memories and what he has done in his life, in his successful life. So thank you for attending this event with us. I want to start with, I used to hear my uncles, Dr. Hisham, Dr. Ahmed Tutunji, Dr. AbdulHamid AbuSulayman, Dr. Jamal, and my father, Dr. Yaqub, and Brother Anwar. A lot of time when I hear them speaking at that time, they always say, we've known each other for 20 years, we've known each other for 25 years, and so on. Now, when I was thinking about my relationship and the first time I met my uncle, Dr. AbdulHamid AbuSulayman, I was really surprised that this was in the mid-70s when when I initially moved with my father from Egypt, and I was 10 years old at the time, to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And he used to teach at the Imam Saud University. And then at night, because, the day was short, kind of, by 2 o'clock, you would be done, and our schools would finish about that time. So you go take a nap. Riyadh is a hot city. And then in the evenings, you spend it doing other things, as socializing or doing, other things. So he used to take me with him, my dad, that is, to Wami, when it was at Shara al-Farazdaq at the time in Riyadh. And I used to spend the night there, of course, in the office of Dr. AbdulHamid AbuSulayman and Dr. Ahmed Tutunji at the time, where they host so many people, and you get to know a lot of them by just the fact that you are basically there, even not contributing in any meaningful way, but just listening to all the people who come and go. And this was kind of a ritual. We used to go there quite frequently. Then Wami, for those of you who don't know it, his world is simply of Muslim youth. Muhammad, I think, talked about it when it was established back in 73. So this was mid-70s, probably 75, 76 time frame. They moved the office to Shara al-Thalathin in Ulayya at that time, just a year later or so. And that same ritual continued. So I had the opportunity to meet Dr. AbdulHamid AbuSulayman, listen to him greeting people, and of course, talking to them about his experience and what they wanted to do at the time, he and Dr. Tutunji through Wami, and what it became actually as an organization. Later on, my second, kind of direct interaction, when in 1984, I didn't attend the first conference for IIIT, but the second conference was in Khartoum, Sudan, in 1984, if I remember correctly, or maybe before or after, a year before or a year after. And it was about a topic that I know it was so close to his heart. And he was, of course, this was after the founding of IIIT back in 1980, 1981, shortly after that, and in the early stage of IIIT. So the topic of that conference, I still remember, it was about methodology, Islamic methodology, which, in my opinion, at that time, it was one of the most important or top priority topic for Dr. AbdulHamid AbuSulayman. He always talked about it, and he always lectured about it, and he thought that this was the crisis in the Muslim mind, if you would. Later on, after that conference, of course, many papers were written on that topic because this was the theme of the conference. In 1987, when I moved to the United States, And Dr.AbdulHamid AbuSulayman, his house was next door to my dad's house, and I used to live in my father's house at the time. My dad, on a personal level, of course, when he had an issue with me being, in my early 20s at the time, or actually late teen, when I moved to the United States, he used to have Ahmed Alwani talk to me about any sticky issue that he doesn't want to handle with me. And, at that time, being a newcomer to the United States, many issues that I had to go through on a personal level. So Ahmed Alwani used to be the one who was the mediator. And I know who, of course, he wouldn't reveal it to me, but I know who was behind it. So I remember quite a few incidents that, he was sort of in the middle of this. And I, of course, out of respect to his opinion and his rationale, because he was a very rational person, I would listen to him and listen to his advice in these circumstances. In '87, I remember when he wrote, and it was a draft, his book on methodology, on Islamic methodology. He gave me a copy of it, and I believe I still have my notes on it. And he asked me, and this is the way he was so respectful to anyone, regardless of age, regardless of stature. At the time I was a graduate of engineering school. I was an avid reader of IIIT books, but I really was not a scholar or someone that he would definitely benefit from at all at that point in time. But he still gave me his book, and he told me, write your notes on it, and let's discuss anything that you think that I should change in it, or add to it, or subtract from it. And this is how he was in terms of his personality. You meet him the first time, and I remember when I met him at WAMI in the mid-'70s, where you think that with all the, the haiba and the stature that he had, that you are in front of a person who would not be as humble as he would reveal to himself to me later on a personal level, when I had that interaction with him personally. Of course, that didn't last for long. In 1988, he moved to Malaysia. So the honeymoon in the U.S., it really didn't last that long. I followed what he was doing, of course, at the time at IIUM. And I think there are a lot more scholars and colleagues who talked about his experience at IIUM and who are more familiar with it. But what I know about it is that, the fact that his interest and his core mission, as was stated, was a reform of education. So whether that manifests itself in his books and the one that Dr. Hisham referred to on Al-Walidiyya, or parenting, or his interest in schooling, where when he was in the United States at the time in the 80s, they helped to establish, and particularly on the curriculum side and otherwise, the Islamic Saudi Academy. And, the group, and he was one of the main participants in the projects, and the one who actually participated in the development of the curriculum and that sort of things. His interest in education, regardless of the wider scope of education, whether it's from, the K-12, and whether it's parenting or higher education, his interest in reform of education and his insight and vision for that was remarkable. And as Dr. Omar Kasuli was saying, he was so consistent with this since the start. He knew what he was trying to do. And added to that, he wasn't only really a thinker in terms of IIIT leadership and IIIT founders, but he was also an organizer and a visionary. It's not just your pure academic who was interested in original thought the way he was, but he was also visionary for what the Muslim Ummah would want to transform itself from where it is today to where it needs to be. And also he was an organizer, and that's what allowed him to be able to manage and be director of IIUM and take it from where it was to where he left it. The other thing that I would like to mention about this and his interest in education, this is part of why when he and Dr. Hisham Al-Talib approached me, this must have been in 2015, I think, probably around that time, and to coordinate the committee on reform of education at IIIT. And this was my latest involvement with the IIIT and how it started. So actually, I started with that committee that he was the head of, and Dr. Hisham was his associate or his vice at the time. And I was brought in as the coordinator for that committee. So I felt really a huge responsibility on my shoulder for just the fact knowing that Dr. AbdulHamid's mission in life probably was a reform of education. For an incident that I remember, and I should mention here in this occasion, I was with him one time in his house, and we were sitting on the couch. He was in one end, still remember it, and I was sitting on the other end. And one thing he told me, he said, Ibni, my son at the time, I know that there would be one thing that would preserve IIIT, and that is for it to be hosted or part of a university. And this was before he started the project of Jamiat Sharq, the University of the East, when it was just an idea. And he and his brothers, Dr. Jamal, Dr. Ahmed, and Dr. Hisham, were still thinking about it. And it was not even, still on the table. This was just an idea. And he said, I learned from my experience at IIUM. And I know that this is not going to work. Our project is not going to work in a public university unless we have our own. So he thought that IIIT, at least based on that, of course, conversation with him, that it should house or be preserved in a university, whatever that meant. And then he started he did the project for the University of the East, Jamiat Sharq in Lebanon, out of his experience with IIUM. And I think the rest of his history, as I hope that other speakers or maybe in the Q&A would talk about that particular project and their experience with it. But this is my experience. He also his interest in not only education as an intellectual process, but the psychology of the child and how important is that, or al-wujdan. The part that he thought that it's probably even more important, and how we should, for example, he has a theory, in terms of teaching children Quran and not to start from Juz'u Amma, because it has the fear of the day of judgment and the fear of Allah, as opposed to based on that relationship that he thought it should be built on love for children, to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and establish relationship with him, as opposed to fear only of God. So he has this theory also out of his interest, again, in the psychology of the child, and that part of tarbiyah or education that he thought is just as important as the intellectual part. So he covered education, in my opinion, from A to Z with all its aspects, and that was my interpretation, my interaction with him. That was his life mission. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين من كل ذنب فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Thank you very much.